Okay, good evening, and welcome to week 5 for Information 5303. Tonight we're obviously doing something a little bit different, doing class online. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to actually do the lecture content part of the night that I would normally have done with obviously less discussion. And then I'll be posting this information on our Blackboard site along with some activities that I'm asking you all to participate in and do some writing and dialogue back and forth with one another and the discussion boards and a couple other things. And that will count as our participation part of the night. All right, I'm going to jump straight in and just remind everyone about where we are in the course. On the screen there, those 4 units are what we have covered in the first 4 weeks, each of them a couple of chapters apiece in general. But remember, we started out the first week, the first unit, those first 2 are really around kind of the foundations and philosophies and just those kind of broad orientation topics. Then the last 2 weeks, we've been looking at specifically some of the technologies themselves, both infrastructure, hardware, software, security, and data that all the technologies work around. We've continued to talk about management and organizational structures as well as the technology. And then we obviously got to see some things in the data center that hopefully brought a few things to mind. Now what we're doing is we're moving into the 3rd unit, the last area that we're going to talk about in this course, and it's the kind of the application. We're going to really try and apply some of these things more to what they look like in a business context and an organizational context. And tonight in particular, we're going to look at some of the management and organizational aspects of information technology and information systems. Okay, so tonight's content is all around IT services, management, and leadership. And we'll jump straight into that. Okay, this actually harkens back to the very first week when in fact, probably the first slide that we looked at together when we talked about information and the idea of information being a strategic resource. And because we made the point that as a resource, it's got to be managed, and that's what managers do, is they manage things. One of those things that they might manage is information, which is different than data. Remember, we made that point as well. Data is a collection of all the pieces, but information is knowledge that you get out of that data. And so if we look at this kind of path that we're building a relationship with some concepts, the first one is that information is a strategic resource and in an organization and has to be managed. That was the very first point. If that's true, the quality of IT services, and we're going to go and define what that means here in a minute, but I'm just making this connection point. It's key to understanding how well that data and that information can make sense within an organization. How we collect it, analyze it, produce it, distribute it. The quality of the ability to do that is going to be incredibly important to an organization. If those things are correct, then IT services, which again I'm going to define, are critical and strategic assets of an organization. The reason I have to make this point is that in many organizations, or in some organizations, IT services are really just seen as a cost center, just something that you have to have, but not seen as strategic. And I'm trying to make the point that an organization that really gets what information systems can do for them sees them as strategic because of this linkage back to these other concepts. So we're going to look at a system that's been developed. It's a set of best practices, really, around how you develop and manage IT services so that you'll understand some of the kind of best current thinking in the marketplace for managing IT services and what that means. Okay, first of all, I have to reiterate a point I told you I was going to make over and over again, and it's important here as well, is that when we talk about services and IT services, we're not just talking about technology, not just about the boxes and wires and all the great stuff we saw in the data center. We've made the point that those things, that there are other domains like management and organization that make a huge impact on the value of information systems in an organization. Here's some examples of some of the ways or some of the components. We call them complementary assets, how they can be valuable across the organization. Things like strategic planning. We talked about return on investment, where you get your technology is sourcing. So you see all those other concepts that we've mentioned before. Here's just a list of them, because each of these things come out in the topics that we're getting ready to discuss. IT leadership itself is a management topic. So not only do you have an IT organization in most places, but that they are led by somebody or by a group of people, and their job is to take information systems and the capabilities that they bring to an organization and use them to deliver business value, not just to deliver technologies. That idea of delivering business value from information systems brings this topic called IT service management. Service management in general, there you can see, is about ensuring that IT services are aligned to the business and the business needs. Alignment is a big topic that we hear about in the information system world or information technology world these days. It's that the information technology organization isn't something separate that sits over here, and the business or the purpose of the business is something that sits over here. They should be lined up, they should be aligned, they should be all pulling in the same direction, if you were. And if they're not, then that's something you need to work on as an IT leader. You would see that in the literature. So here's some more information about service management in general. It's a way of understanding what services that you provide. Actually, one of the hardest things to do, strangely enough, as an information technology professional, is to define and understand exactly what your services are, what it is that you offer, what it is that you do for an organization. But once you do that, that's a key step in service management. Then you want to ensure that those services are actually reaching the outcomes that your business wants them to. You can see some of those other things. Managing costs and risk, you can see is important. In general, service management, though, this concept, is just a specialized set of capabilities that you develop for providing value to customers. And that whole phrase of providing value is important. We're going to come back around to that here. In fact, remember when I said earlier that we were going to talk about IT services and define that? Well, a service in this way of thinking is simply just a means of delivering value. It's a way that you bring value to a customer through the capabilities that you offer. And something interesting about this concept of value is that value is always determined by the customer, not by the service provider. So I don't get to say to my organization, I am bringing great value to you. The organization gets to look at me and say what you're doing is of value or it's not of value. So value is always shaped from the direction of the customer. A really important concept in IT service management or service management in general. One of the things that we look at is what are the outcomes that our customers want to achieve? What are they trying to do? And then we try and align our services to do that, but the value that they determine from what we're trying to do gets directed, is always from their perspective. So let me introduce you to a topic, a concept, and a term in particular. Hopefully you did a little bit of reading about this and watched some of their videos online, and that is, what is ITIL? ITIL, it used to stand for the IT Infrastructure Library, but it's something like, well, KFC used to stand for Kentucky Fried Chicken, but now the company is literally just called KFC, that kind of thing. It doesn't really stand for that anymore. It's just the acronym. And it's got a long history. It's been around for 20, 30 years at this point. It was originally a set of best practices that were developed by the British government. They owned the copyright, they owned the intellectual property, and used that to promote these concepts and ideas for a number of years under the authority of the British government. In recent years, however, that they have actually sold the rights to the intellectual property to a holding company, a third-party holding company called Axelos, that owns a number of best practice frameworks and uses those frameworks to promote what they do and to promote the ideas. They own ITIL and they own a couple others. And hopefully you read and got to view a little bit about them. The reason that they're important is that they have been, the ITIL has become the default framework for best practices of IT service management in the industry over the last 30 years. And it's something I'm going to walk through now in a little detail to explain what it actually looks like and how we apply that to our IT management world. Okay, the graphic may be a little bit small on your screen, but that's okay. We don't need to see all the nitty-gritty details. What I want to point out is the idea that ITIL brings to the table, that services, first and foremost, have a life cycle. That is, they have a beginning, but not really an end. They have a place where they start, but then they grow and move and change, and eventually become the next iteration of a service until it does finally go away. But I'll walk through what some of that means. So if you'll notice from the map or the graphic, they have ITIL there in the center. And in the middle, around that, is a kind of a bluish color circle that says service strategy. Service strategy is all about what services we should be delivering. That's essentially the basic question that it asks. What are the questions we should be delivering? And as I mentioned from the previous slides, those services should be things that align with the value and the purpose of the organization. They should bring value to customers. Those are some of the inputs that you see in service strategy. Then the way to read the graphic is you next go up to service design. So once you know what services you should be offering, you then identify those services and you begin to design them. How are we going to actually deliver that value? Well, you have to design it to be valuable. Then service transition is where you put that service into place. It's the process and program around actually taking a design and putting it into fruition, making it come to life. Then the next step is service operations. So you've put it into practice. Now you want to operate it on an ongoing basis. And then the next way to read the graphic is skip those smaller text to move to the biggest circle up at the top. It says continual process improvement, which is essentially once you have the service operating, you want to continue to improve it over time, and it continues to bring value over time. That's a very high level picture of what it looks like, and I'm going to walk through some of those details in the following slides. Okay, service strategy is, remember, the center point of the circle there, and its purpose is to ensure that services are provided, that are provided are perceived by the customer as delivering sufficient value. We've talked about that a couple of times. There is a set of terms that they've developed inside of ITIL that's really helpful here, and that's where a customer is going to make the determination of its value, is these concepts of utility and warranty. Now, utility is, what does the service do? It's the utility that the service provides. So, for example, an email system. You could look at that and say, let's name electronic communication as the service that we're talking about. Well, what does it do? It allows you to send the messages to other people electronically. That's its utility. And so if it allows me to do that, a customer might look at that and say its utility is high. But if it takes 2 hours for that message to be delivered, it would say, well, that's not really bringing a lot of value because it has low warranty, which is the second bullet there. Warranty is how well it does what it's supposed to do. So utility is what is it delivering. Warranty is how well is it doing it. A 2-hour delay in sending email would be considered unacceptable, and so the service value would be low. Those are how those two things work together, and it's a key concept within service strategy. There's a couple of particular process areas: financial management, portfolio management, and demand management. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any of these. I just want you to see some of the types of processes that occur within each of these areas, and I may point out a couple of them that I find particularly interesting. All right, service design is the next stage. Once you've decided what services to offer, and you have planned for those to have both high utility and high warranty, you then design a service to meet those goals. And it often talks about this idea of 4 Ps of design: people, products, process, and partners. All those things are required to develop a good design. At the end of the day, when you're done designing a service, what you have done is developed what's called a service design package. And that's, I think, an important term for you to recall for a future quiz. A service design package is that item that it's the deliverable out of the design phase that you will use in the next phase. A couple other process areas you can see there on the right: capacity and availability. We've talked about those two terms in previous classes. It's the idea that whatever technology you're developing continues to be able to, it has the capacity to deal with the load that's being put on it, and it's available when it needs to be available. We also talked about security, information security management there, and its role. Whatever service you're designing needs to be secure and protected and not raise the risk of the organization. And the first one I'll mention something interesting about, and that's the service catalog management. Service catalog turns out to be really important. You have to know what services you offer, way back in the first slides we were talking about, in order to develop a catalog. But a catalog is a place where you make the services available. It's kind of a listing of services that you're providing to the organization. Quite often, organizations, businesses will have something that's called a service portal. It's basically where you go to get services, an IT service portal where you log in to get an email account, or to request technologies, or to ask for permissions to certain other tools. That would be an online service catalog, and is a really key area of many IT organizations. So once you've decided what services to offer, you've designed them according to the criteria, then you want to put them in place. You want to actually transition them from being just a design to being an operational system. That's the purpose of the service transition lifecycle phase. And its whole idea is to take that service design package that was developed in the previous step and actually put it into place. It's the step where something moves from idea to being something that a user can actually consume and use. Change management is an important process within service transition. It's both technical and communication. So whenever you're introducing something new, you're making changes to an environment. It's really important that you do so carefully in a very planned way. Not only so that users will know things about it, but also so that the technologies that you implement don't cause problems for other technologies. That whole concept of carefully planning and communicating what you're getting ready to do is called change management, and it's a really important aspect of service transition. Okay, the final stage of this part is called service operations. Again, once you've decided what services to offer, you've designed them to meet the business goals, you've put them into place with transition management, you then have a live service called, or that lives in the service operations phase. This is where, this is the point at which users know about it, where you can go and buy it or utilize it or consume it, all those different verbs that describe different interactions amongst the service and the users. A couple of things that are really important here in these phases are incident management and request fulfillment. Incident management is essentially the idea of when something's not working right and a user needs help, they contact typically a help desk or a service desk. Well, when you do that, you are reporting to them an incident in the ITIL vocabulary, and you're telling them this service isn't working right. My computer won't turn on, or I can't get my email, or my phone sounds scratchy, or whatever you're reporting an incident. Incident management is the process of fixing that and getting it put back in place. It's the part that we're most familiar with as end users. Whenever we contact a help desk and ask them to fix a problem, they are performing incident management and getting us back into service. Request fulfillment is similar but slightly different. You're not reporting a problem, you're simply asking for something. You're asking for a new phone or a new computer or a piece of software or permissions. Nothing's broken, it's just you need something from them. That whole idea is request fulfillment. It usually has a couple of stages, like the request is made, there's sometimes permissions required for you to get what you're asking for, and then there's fulfillment. And it works, and it's kind of its own little mini cycle within service operations. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is this broader idea is once you've got a service in place, it's not okay just to let it stay there and operate on its own. You have to continually put effort into that service in an idea that's called continual service improvement or continual process improvement. They're both kind of interchangeable at this level. And that's the idea of you want to measure how well a service is performing and report out what you get out of that. Those are two key processes that you see there, service measurement and service reporting. I think I also have a slide here, I guess not, of the 7-step improvement process. It's kind of small here, but it is essentially a model you can find. It's not specific to information or to ITIL per se, but it's just an idea about how you go about making something improve. And it talks about essentially measuring what you can measure, the reporting on those things, and then making an intervention of some sort and measuring again. So it's just a cycle of measurement and reporting and then making a change to try and make that better. Those are the pieces around the continual service improvement. So altogether, ITIL is a set of best practices built around some life cycle stages of services. Services are things that bring value to the organization, and you have a strategy around which ones you're going to provide. You design them to meet business needs, you transition them into place, you operate them effectively, and you continually improve them. That's the idea behind the best practices of how you manage and direct IT services.